Wedding's a beautiful union of two people, and when you get invited to it, there is a little bit of trouble. What should you wear? How do you know what you should wear? This video will be discussing and seeing the examples straight from the runway with some helpful tips and tricks to find out what you should and shouldn't wear. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Design or Design. My name is Maria and this channel is all about runway analysis, all about the runway trends, and today we will head in to a particular design challenge or wardrobe challenge, figuring out what to wear at the wedding that you were invited to. Rule number one, do not wear white. No matter how much you want to, even if it's an off-white, even if it's like a really light yellow or other pastel, like super light pastels, because then you might be confused with a bride, and you don't want to be confused with a bride. Even if you're soon-to-be mother-in-law, don't wear white. It's not your celebration, okay? Even if it has a pattern on top, don't wear white, please don't. But what you should wear is pretty clear, and there's always little hints of it sprinkled throughout the invitations, the venue of the proceedings, the venue of the reception. So let's get into a few popular styles of weddings and see some examples of what you can wear to stay on top of trends and be nice and presentable, and the bride would thank you for it. So the first one is the traditional wedding. Usually by invitation, you can see that it is a really clean and nice invitation. There might be a crest on there. The names would be in calligraphy written, very nice and clean. You can't figure out the thought process behind that. Then check out the venues that stated on the invitation. And if it's a great hall, a ballroom, then this is definitely a classical one. So for these ones, for men, is simple, a tuxedo. You guys, black tuxedo, maybe have a little bit more accessorized lapels on it, that's fine too. Women can also wear tuxedos. There's lots of tuxedo-esque dresses as well, which I love, and maybe even a sequins tuxedo. We do want to create a little bit more celebration when it comes to the gowns and the dresses, so a little sparkle never hurts anybody. We can also go a little bit more flowy with the dresses, with the gowns. We can do maybe a little bit more covered. Usually that's a great way to go. You don't want to look overly sexualized when you are attending a wedding. For me, I like to do a rule of the skin. You don't want to completely cover yourself, but you don't want to have everything showing. So for instance, if you are loving your legs, then pick out a more of a shorter dress, but have longer sleeves and no cleavage showing. On the other hand, if you do love your cleavage, then have it the only skin present. You can also have just the back of it open. So the less skin you show is more, but then you still want to give it a little bit skin. Anyways, more feminine silhouettes like using peplum to create that shape, or maybe more cinched in blazers. Chanel is a perfect example of very classy outfits that you could wear to a wedding. Maybe a little cardigan sets, maybe a little tweed set. I imagine like the mothers of the bride and groom wearing this. This would be perfect. We also see more of this in Fendi with a little bit more of decor through beads and sparkly situation on the garments. Really lovely Schiaparelli here with the fancier buttons. And of course, this might look too simple, but you can accessorize it to create a little bit more of a special feeling to it. Maybe have opera gloves, maybe have some interesting dangling earrings, or you can even just wear a nice suit, both men and women. Next one up is the romantic one. Usually through the invitations, there's lots of florals. It's very dainty. There might be a loving photo in there. And the venues would have more like airy, white, lots of florals. And this is perfect for a romantic style. We see lots of very light colors like pastels. We see ribbons. We see Chanel here with the layered mesh on top, creating those airy feelings. Chloe here with a little bit of a vintage lace. We have Chanel here with more ruffles as well as Chloe. So think about ruffles, think about nice textures, smooth or very delicate flowers, florals of course, but think about again to the color palette that might be the wedding palette. Usually they are kind of in the same realm as the invitations. So take a look at what colors there are in the invitation. Maybe think about the florals that are on the invitations and try to get an outfit that matches that invitation. If you look as if you belong to the aesthetic of the wedding to be, you are guaranteed to have way more photos taken of you because the photographer wants to have the bride happy and the bride just wants everything to look cohesive. I know you want to stand out with your incredible outfit, but if you stand out too much, the bride might not be that happy. If you're still puzzled with the romantic trend or romantic style for the wedding, then make sure to check out my video, will be linked here. Next one is the Bohemian, quite similarly to the romantic trend, but it takes it into a more warmer, cozier style. We see in the invitations more earth-like themes like feathers. The locations could be outside, somewhere under a tent or in a barn with lots of dry foliage and more like basket-esque lamps. For sure, check out the Chloe show, very flowy gowns, maybe even sometimes having a fur moment here and there. Lots of ruching again, but it is a little bit calmer. It's less dainty than the romantic trend, more flowy, more ruffles, more volume to it for sure. Maybe lots of sheer layering. And usually the color scheme of the Bohemian weddings would be a little bit more nature-based. So maybe the greens would be deeper. There would be browns and orange colors, might be like a darker, moodier burgundies, or as you can see here, a little bit on a pinker side. We see lots of prints and patterns in this kind of a feel. So more of greenery as a pattern, or maybe more rustic kind of florals. We see lots of textures as well. Here Zimmerman is another great example of the Bohemian trend. So you can see really flowing gowns, lots of ruffles, some have patterns and prints on it. There's some sets of pants and shirts. Sometimes they match, sometimes they don't, but yes. Next one is rustic. So the difference between Bohemian and rustic is a lot more cozy. You can see here there's like unfinished wood. There will be more details. Maybe the invitation would be cut out of wood. Maybe they will have a nice kind of a vintagey ribbon. There would be some kind of an aesthetic like this. Maybe really vintage like florals. The venue would most likely be a barn or some sort of outside inside kind of a situation, maybe a greenhouse. For this, think about those colors. Definitely those colors will be present in the invitations. Think about what patterns will work with that. Go for, again, deeper colors that are a little bit muted. You can definitely work with several patterns and clash them together. Once again, a little bit voluminous, a little bit more cozy outfits too, especially for fall, winter. Think about an addition of vintage brooches, maybe some handmade items like earrings that you made yourself or bracelets, maybe a beaded outer layer like here in Dress Van Noten. Patterns or prints, you can pay attention to folk-like motifs such as florals. Attire here with the single pattern going throughout the entire outfit. Louis Vuitton here with, again, the florals. Roberta Cavalli, perfect example of the florals that I'm talking about. More moodier, especially the winter florals. Right now it's fall winter. So winter florals is the dark background with the brighter flowers on top. You can also see more of the wallpaper-esque patterns as well. Valentino here, Moschino, pairing the florals together. They aren't super bright, but mixed together give that rustic appeal. Textures also is a great way to introduce this coziness to your outfit. We see here in more of the ladylike aesthetic, but it is a little bit on a wider side. It's not too pristine. It's inviting. You are nice and cozy, and you know, just everybody wants to hug you. Prada here again with a little bit more of the florals, but the fit of it is inviting. You're not scary. It's not a crazy fashion show where everybody has to look perfect. It is more of a family gathering. It is more of that really happy feeling. We can see also a little bit more of maybe like corsetry with cottagecore aesthetic, with handmade knits, maybe lace pieces adding to this aesthetic and creating that warmth. But let's head into completely opposite style, and that's the modern. In the invitation, it would be as if a great graphic designer has designed it. Maybe it would be a unique imprint in the invitation. Maybe it's going to be a unique shape. Maybe it's going to be even really unique color scheme. So the colors will definitely help you out with the choice of outfits. If the venue looks very geometrical, very modern-like, very triangular, and lacking in color, that's definitely a modern wedding. For this, definitely lots of examples. I had made like almost 20 minutes worth of examples from the runways for this, because it's much more freeing and you can do a little bit more experimentation. You can go for a interesting outfit, because a modern wedding, people are ready. People want to see something interesting, something modern. So you can definitely get away with really interesting outfits. Maybe a little bit more scandalous, you know, maybe showing a little bit more skin, or going a simplicity route with minimalistic outfits as well. So here you can go monochrome in your outfit. That will be a really interesting shape, interesting silhouette. You can go for a much more cleaner also. Pretty much anything goes, honestly, as long as it's not white, and as long as you don't, you know, show off your entire body. It can be an oversized suit. It could be something more interesting, maybe something with a print. So once again, thinking about the colors, pair it to the invitation. That's the simplest thing that you could do. If you're not sure if the invitation is black and white, you can always go for something black, or ask the bride or somebody really close to the bride and see if there is a color scheme for the wedding. Grays is also a very nice alternative. Givenchy here with amazing suits and dress blazers that are backwards. This is definitely something modern with a super snatched waistline. Oh my goodness, these are amazing. Maybe the easiest thing to dance in, but you know, maybe you could have a pop of color in your outfit. All right, let's talk about how can you show your personality while still being in that frame of the wedding design, of the wedding aesthetic. Maybe you are very cottagecore, but you were invited to a modern wedding. Okay, think about it in the way of a pizza. So you want your outfit to be maybe 3/4 of a pizza in the style of what bride wants, and then have a 1/4 that is more your style. So for instance, have a modern dress, but then have a little bit more of a cottagecore accessories that bring out your character, that you feel like this is it, this is me. And so you would not stand out in the crowd of really modern looking people in your full-on cottagecore vibes. You can definitely go for some really interesting shoes or really interesting accessory, maybe a super nice brooch. Or you can go for a normal suit, but have the pattern of it that reflects that cottagecore aesthetic. Maybe it's a daintier floral print, or maybe it's a really cozy plaid, but with the structure of a classical suit. So yeah, anyways, looking back to the runways, some amazing examples of the suits here in Tom Ford with really cool pops of colors. Definitely think about that. And going back to the invitations, maybe some muted patterns and interesting new designs that kind of look like a work of art instead. Maybe think about the textures that are something that's, makes you think, something that it doesn't really exist in the real world for everybody to see. Or if you're completely out of ideas, just go for a suit. This is always a safe bet. Maybe add an additional accessory in a form of a brooch, or think about accessorizing a little bit more than you usually would with some interesting earrings or other interesting accessories like shoes. Also, you can come up with a more modern style when you're combining different aesthetics together. For instance, dress for note in here, and I've mentioned it in more of the rustic one, but pairing the dress with the pants already creates that nuance of a modern look. Maybe some interesting texture, like here in Jill Sanders with the fringe. And usually when you're going to something like a wedding, if you have formal wear suits that you don't usually wear together and kind of separate them apart, wear them together this time. It creates a little bit more impact, a little bit more of put togetherness, and it just looks much nicer as if it's a special occasion. Definitely lots of professional-esque wear could be suited for this. Here we're looking at Yves Saint Laurent, and yes, those colors are quite bright, but if they follow the color palette of the wedding, it should be great. Also, Stella McCartney here with the prints. Yes, sometimes they might be out of place if you're attending a different type of wedding with those strong shoulders, but if the bride wants a modern aesthetic, then you should look really great on there. Valentino here again with those sharp shoulders. I love these looks. Maybe don't really go for the entire accessorization as it is shown on the runways, because they do want to spice things up. They want more people to talk about them, so they sometimes create really interesting looks that not always look great together. So think about what can you substitute, what can you change in order to look cohesive and all together. Another way of creating a modern outfit is adding a surprising element. For instance, Simon Rocha here with the fur detailing or the really chunky chain and lock. Also think about, is this going to happen at a church or is it going to happen at a completely different location? Then it could estimate how much skin you want to show. For instance, if it's a wedding in a church, you might want to cover up your shoulders with a little bit of a scarf or have a floor-length coat on top of your shorter dress just for the church proceedings, but you can always abandon it when you hit the dance floor. Next one up is glam. So for glam aesthetic, there's also a lot of freedom if you want to look really extravagant and, dare I say, sexy. From the invitation, what you can see is maybe the dark background with gold leaf text. Maybe it could be a roaring 20s kind of a vibe. Maybe it's a traditional material like mirror or clear plastic that the invitation was printed on. For the venue, it will be grand, it would be shiny, it would have chandeliers and a more modern touch to them. They will have just the whole thing sparkling. It might be a more vintagey spot as well. We are getting the picture, right? So for this aesthetic, you could think about lots of texture. You can think about sequins. Maybe you can think about velvet, feathers, really outrageous accessories. Definitely lots of metallics, as I mentioned in the invitation with the gold leaf. So silvers, golds, depending on what looks best with your skin tone. As long as it doesn't look too light, too white to it, then you should be okay. Eula Johnson here with the gold accents all over, or maybe it's a more exciting fringy beaded situation. Lots of textures like here in Valentino, lots of sparkle. When we think about glam, it is lots of sparkle. more sculptural feminine figures like we see in Schiaparelli, either very tight dresses or something accentuating the hips. Velvet is another great idea for this, a more rich type material. And unfortunately, all of these textures that I have mentioned for glam, they tend to add a little bit more weight to you because of their shine, because they attract more attention, they just create that volume. So maybe think about having a set and break it up. Maybe if you're reverse triangle, then having the bottoms as velvet and then the top being matte, or the other way around. If you're pear-shaped, think about where you want that sequence to be on the top or the bottom. Once again, the sequence, the brightness, it creates more visual volume. Tom Ford here with bedazzled suits. I feel like for men, for sure, it's a great idea. Not sure where else you would wear this, maybe to another glam wedding or maybe a New Year's Eve party. We also see these beautiful beaded gowns. We have here Ali Saab with lace slash sequence designs. I love it. And they have little turtlenecks over top. So when you're cold, because it's winter, you guys, and going maybe from the venue to the reception, then you can, get a little bit covered. Maybe don't wear the fur hat. For men, maybe lace see-through shirts with a blazer on top. For women, maybe a little bit more flowy, a little bit more skin showing, something lacy like here in Valentino. Maybe have lacy tights and lacy underlay underneath the dress. Maybe have a little bit more of sparkle. Maybe have opera gloves. Schiaparelli here with more skin tight outfits. This is definitely okay for glam aesthetic, and especially if you're happy with your figure and how it all looks together. Valentino again with more gowns. Fur is another texture for glam, so having little bits and pieces of fur, definitely something interesting. Nina Ricci here with the kind of a vintage vibe and the fur boas. And that's kindly leads us into the vintage. So vintage invitations would have very vintage looking artwork. It would have maybe little designs, more vintagey looking florals, vintagey looking fonts, and maybe even the paper itself would be a little old like. For the venues, it would definitely be somewhere in a historic building, in an old church maybe. And you can think about what the bride's style is, and if she loves vintage, then it's probably what it will be. So here we see in Alexander McQueen a little bit of a take on the male army uniform. Maybe it's the collar, maybe it's the bow, maybe it's elements of that older styling. And of course, if it's vintage, it could have different eras. So you need to figure out which era you are aiming to and then play around it. You don't have to go vintage shopping for this. There are so many costume rental places all over the world, and you can just go to them and be like, hey, I need to get dressed for a wedding for a roaring 20s. And then they'll be like, yes, sure, here you go. Do this and this and this. You can also make your regular dress a little bit more vintagey by having right accessories. So maybe more delicate floral pins, having a little bit of a hat situation, or whatever the decade you are aiming for. There are also lots of more modern takes on the vintage vibes. Like here we see more dropped waist dresses and more fur moments. They're quite bright, but if the bride approves, then the bride approves. But you can also definitely find something really interesting in thrift store and secondhand store, so feel free to experiment. All right, next one up is the cultural / themed weddings. You will definitely know this by the invitation or maybe the couple that is getting married. And this is definitely something that you should participate in. Maybe there is going to be a kiss a band show, or maybe it's a circus kind of a themed wedding. People are crazy and they want what they want. And you know what? I love when I have a themed party and people go all out. That makes me the happiest. If I invite everybody and everybody just in their regular clothes, I would be very sad that I put all of this effort into creating a special moment for everybody to have fun and nobody took the advantage and nobody did this. So if you're attending a more cultural wedding, then you totally need to ask for permission or ask if this is okay, or would I offend somebody by trying to show my interest, show my respect to that culture by wearing their traditional outfits. Maybe don't bother the bride as much because she has lots of things to take care of. But if you know somebody from the bridal party, maybe their relatives, go and ask if this is okay. Ask if they actually have something that you could borrow and wear for the wedding, because usually they have lots of that and they don't really like to repeat their outfits a lot. So maybe it might be a little bit lighter on your wallet. If it's a more themed party, once again, there's lots of costume rentals all over. Maybe it's something that the bride and groom really enjoy. It's a little bit more darker. And you could ask them or their friends if you could borrow something from them to fit into that aesthetic of the wedding. And I promise they would be so happy that you are showing that interest in being a part of it, in seeing their vision to the end, that they're for sure gonna have something to give you to wear to their big day. Just make sure to give it back to them at the end, okay? Well, you guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope I helped you figure out what to wear to that next wedding you were invited to. If you are married and you have any really fun or frustrating stories about guests wearing something ridiculous, I would love to read those stories in the comments down below. Another way you can support this channel is by liking this video and sharing it. Maybe you're a bride and you want your guests to look presentable, so share it with them. I've been to a few weddings, so if you want to check out what I wore or what I wear from day to day, then make sure to check out my Instagram, where I try to share my daily outfits and some trend report things. But other than that, I hope you have an amazing rest of the day, and yeah, stay classy. Bye.